So what I want to talk with you about today is the idea of changing the person you can change, right? Any idea? Any idea who that might be? Right? So changing the person you can change, right? Um, it is stunning how many people come in to see me who would say they know this, they understand the importance of focusing on the person they can change, which is who, of course, themselves, yourself. So many people say they understand that, and yet in all the interactions that I am able to observe, uh, what we get is just typical back and forth, blaming, accusing, finger pointing, arguing, nitpicking. It's my clinical name that I have assigned to it is what I call oppositionality. Right? It's like the basic way that so many couples are kind of being toward each other, and it's why they're stuck, because you know what, there's no end. Oppositionality, think of it as a treadmill. You get on that and you don't get off. um, there is just no exit there. It's going to be he blames her and then she blames him, and then then he blames her and then she blames him, and back and forth and back and forth it's going to go. And they're just going to remain stuck there unless one of them does something really, really radical. And you know what that radical thing is? The thing that each partner can do that actually is a requirement if they want to see real change? That radical thing is for each partner to focus pretty much exclusively on themselves, on they themselves becoming the person as an individual and in the relationship that they need to be. Several years ago, there was a movie, as a Christian movie, and then a book sort of came out that was based on the movie. I think the movie was called, I remember if it was called Fireproof or Courageous, which one it was, but the book that was made to go with the movie was called The Love Dare. The Love Dare, and yes, I'm saying that because I do recommend that you consider picking it up if you haven't. Pretty religious book. It's not, that part of it won't be for everybody, but the basic idea of the Love Dare is that it's 40 days, and every day there is one loving thing that it tells you to do for your partner. And there are two sort of caveats attached to that. One of them is don't draw any attention to it. Do the thing and don't draw any attention to it. The other thing is don't expect your partner to notice. Don't expect your partner to go, oh, that thing you did today, you made me coffee, or you brought home flowers, or you bought me a new video game, or whatever it is. Don't expect your partner to notice. You know why those two caveats are critical? Because if you aren't focusing on yourself so directly and so intently that your goal and your aim is simply to do the things that a loving person does, right? That you're trying to just become that person and do those things regardless of how your partner responds or doesn't respond. If you're not that laser focused on tending to yourself and watching your own behaviors and trying to do the things that you need to do to change, if you're not that focused on it, it's not going to succeed. Let me tell you why. I love this example. I don't remember when I first came up with this, but I really like this. I hope it can really provoke some good thought in you. Have you ever been in a situation where, say you're arguing with your partner and things are really, really getting intense, right? And you're just going back and forth, you know the routine, right? Come on. So you're doing that thing, you're going back and forth and getting more and more worked up. And then at some point, something comes out of your mouth that is like so bad, right? So hurtful or so critical or unnecessary, like not called for, whatever it is, right? Something comes out of your mouth that even as you're saying it, something in your brain is like, you're saying it, but your brain is also going, yeah, bad move. You totally should not be saying this right now, right? Like, have you had that happen? Because I have. And so you're saying this thing, but your brain is already going, yeah, this is one you're gonna definitely need to take back. Okay, so, and then you finish saying what you're gonna say, and then you're sort of taking your next breath, and then you're getting ready to say the next thing, which in your heart and in your mind is going to be, gosh, I'm so sorry that I totally crossed a line right there. I'm really sorry. That's what you were going to do. But before you get a chance to do it, you're taking that breath, right, to do that, to issue the apology. But your partner just heard that, just absolutely devastating tirade, of whatever that thing is that you just said. And as you're taking your breath to apologize, your partner says, I can't believe you said that. You owe me an apology. You ever had that happen? If you have, you know what I'm getting at there. Because there you were, really wanting to apologize. I mean, you knew that you'd done something you shouldn't do, or been someone you really don't want to be toward the person you love. And you wanted to apologize. It was in your heart. And now your partner is demanding it of you. And what position does that put you in? Puts you in a position that even if you do apologize, it's going to look like you're only doing it because your partner's making you do it. And that's a really bad position for you to be in, because that was about to be something really heartfelt. I mean, that was about to be you in a sincere moment of insight and self-reflection, accepting real responsibility. But now your spouse is standing there angrily demanding that you give them that apology. And it actually, this is strange to think about, but it actually robs you of the ability to give that apology and have it look sincere. Because your partner will demand it, and if you give it, your partner's going to think, and they might even say, oh, great, you only said that because I told you to, right? I mean, you sort of can't come across as genuine now, right? They have actually robbed you of the ability to do what you knew you needed to do in an authentic way. So that example is really kind of gets to the essence of the problem that partners have when they aren't looking at themselves. Okay, because the more you're looking at your partner, the more you're saying to your partner, you need to change. The problem is you. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if you weren't doing what you're doing. The more you do that in your relationship, the more you are making it impossible for your partner to really make the kinds of change that you want them to make. Because now you're demanding it from them, and we will not change when it feels like somebody is standing over us with a whip, demanding that we do so. It's just not possible, because it's degrading, right? You end up feeling sort of a loss of self, like somebody's like, you change, you are too much this, and they're really going at it. And it's like, even if you know that there's some truth in what they're saying, I mean, you can't even hardly cop to that, because if you do, you're afraid that you're going to encourage them to keep sort of riding you, or to keep being as angry as they're being, or to keep criticizing, hurting you, insulting you, being demanding, whatever it is that you're feeling they're doing. So we're telling our partner, You have to change. Here's your problem. Here's what you're doing wrong. And in the very act of doing that, we're making it almost impossible, if not completely impossible, for them to be introspective, for them to think about their own behaviors, for them to see themselves in the relationship and in an argument and be able to really get that insight that is so important, where they can sort of reflect. And just like when you're doing that tirade to your spouse and it's something inside of you starts going, you know what, you're crossing the line, your partner needs the freedom to come to that conclusion. You can't get them there. Okay? There's only one person you can change, and that's you. There's only one person your partner can change, and that's your partner. So if you stick with the oppositionality, if you just kind of keep externalizing, blaming your partner, putting it all, or even most of it, or really hardly any of it, if you're really focused on them rather than on yourself, they're not going to be able to make the very change that you are demanding they make, right? And they'll get defensive, and then they'll take your demandingness and your frustration and your anger, and they'll just use that for ammo to throw right back at you. And you know that. They've done it before, and you've done it before to them, because that's how that whole cycle works. So change the person you can change, right? You have to not, I know this is hard. It actually requires really, really profound personal, emotional, and I would say even spiritual work in a person who is in that oppositional web. You really have to dig down and cultivate new qualities, new aspects of your character, levels of patience that maybe you don't have, cultivating more empathy, the ability to express that your partner's feelings are safe with you, and it's okay for them to express them, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. And you know what? Even if the way they're saying it really needs some work, right? Even if you're trying to accept some responsibility and not externalize, not blame, not turn the tables and point your finger at them, even if they're not being the way they ought to be. Maybe especially in that case, because if you use the fact that they're not being how they ought to be to justify you not being how you ought to be, and they're using the fact of how you're not who you ought to be to justify them not being who they ought to be, there's the cycle. So you have to get out of that. You have to be able to set that aside. You have to be able to turn that around. That's what good couples therapy does. Good couples therapy helps you understand that dynamic, how impossible, fruitless, damaging, and life-draining it is. It's a soul-sucking cycle, and if you're stuck in it, you know where I'm saying, you know that's true. It's soul-sucking. Good therapy helps you understand that, and helps you gradually make the kinds of changes you need to make so that you're being the person in the relationship you need to be. And your partner, if you're in therapy, is going to have to take that equally seriously, and they're going to have to become the person they need to be. And you can't do quid pro quo. Well, I'm working, I'm trying, how come they're not trying? You see, that just goes right back to the cycle again. What I'm talking about is difficult. So check out the Love Dare, okay? And by the way, if you do, don't tell your spouse you did it. Don't tell your spouse you did it. Don't expect them to notice and shower you with gratitude. Accept this idea that once a day for 40 days, you're going to do something loving for your spouse for no other reason than because you want to show love and it's the right thing to do in a committed relationship. Love, not for thanks, not for reward, not for praise, not for sex, right? But love for its own sake. Love for the sake of love. All right, I'm going to wrap this up for today. Want to do my usual spiel at the end. I encourage you to follow me here on Facebook. You're watching this on Facebook either now as I'm recording it, or you'll be watching it later on. So I encourage you to like my Facebook page or follow it. All my social media stuff, my YouTube stuff, Instagram, Twitter, that stuff is all available. My blog, all that stuff is available on my website at davidflowerstherapy.com. I encourage you to follow me there in whatever format you want to. And the main thing is, if you know anybody whose marriage is struggling and they need some encouragement and maybe some straight talk and some real direction, I encourage you to just pass this along to them. Let's get the word out and do what we can to help as many people as we can. That's what I'm doing this for. Thanks again for tuning in. I so appreciate you, and it's my privilege to be able to help you in any way that I can. I'll be back, as always, next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Oh, and by the way, I'm celebrating, I believe that today is my 10th week in a row doing these videos. So hey, it's kind of a little bit of a milestone. So that's pretty cool. I will be back next week, Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and I will see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in.